All right, before we get out to practice and we start to get a pulse of what's going on, I want to get into the offenses. I asked DeMeco Ryans yesterday about the unique nature of the offense that he's going to be facing in regards to the Kansas City Chiefs, and you'll hear what he said in just a sec. But let's just look at this on the surface. If nobody watched the Chiefs or the Texans or knew anything about their rosters, and they just looked at the basic stats without any gray area, you would think these were two very, very moderate offenses incapable of really moving the rock. And you might be half right, but on the other half, and unfortunately for DeMeco Ryans, that's the one he has to worry about. Fortunately, if his front seven continues to play their way, but Kansas City, there's a little bit more gray area that we got to look into. Yards, the Chiefs average 326, the Texans average 319. That's far from the top. Points, the Chiefs average 22.6, the Texans average 21.9. Far from the top. However, the Kansas City Chiefs have not had their full allotment of skill position guys all season long. They had Hollywood Brown out for the majority of the season. Travis Kelce kind of has lost a step. Xavier Worthy kind of trying to find his way. Isaiah Pacheco got hurt. They didn't have DeAndre Hopkins all season long. They made that trade. And they have some second-tier guys in Kareem Hunt and Samaje Perine who provide issues as well. So it's somewhat misleading because a lot of times at this time of the year, teams are banged up. This is going to be the healthiest that the Kansas City skill position guys have been. Now, some people may be talking about the Texans injuries. I'll tell you why I'm not really buying that as much. But first, let's hear what DeMeco Ryans had to say yesterday when I was at practice, when I asked him about these skill position guys in that unique challenge.
A lot of teams are banged up this time of the year. Kansas City, probably the healthiest they've been skill position-wise on offense. How challenging is what they have weapon-wise for Mahomes?
They present a unique challenge because when you talk about their skill position, they have 5 guys who are all elite playmakers, right? Everybody they put on the field that's ineligible has a chance to create an explosive and make plays. And it's not always the explosive play down the field. It can be, Worthy just on a 1-yard pass and him turn it into an explosive. So they present probably the biggest challenge we faced all year. And it takes everyone, right? That's why I talk about our defense. Like, it's going to be a collective effort from everybody. It's not just stopping one guy. It's not just stopping Kelce, right? Their running backs is really good. I don't think Perine gets a lot of credit, but he's a guy who's one of the smartest guys when it comes to pass pro, protecting, blocking, running routes. Like, he's another guy you have that you can't sleep on him as well. So they do a really good job of – I think Patrick does a really great job just distributing the football to whoever's open. And it just reminds you of everybody – makes the analogy of the point guard in the NBA, but that's what he is. He's truly point guard, and he's dishing the ball to whoever's open. And it's not only down the field, it's the short passes. That guys open, he's getting the football, and those guys are converting and creating explosives. So everybody – sideline to sideline, we have to play with great awareness, great eye discipline. We have to tackle really well.
Is there any more challenge to, like, from a defensive coordinator standpoint, where you really haven't had the visual of all these guys on the field healthy at the same time?
No challenge. We'll attack what they do, and we'll see how it turns out.
Now, let's. In fairness, DeMeco is a guy who puts together really good game plans in the postseason. I think he does an excellent job of putting together game plans in the postseason. Now, you heard him mention a couple of things. I was glad that he gave Samaje Perine credit, following him from Pflugerville to OU and making a career for himself. I was glad he gave him credit. But he mentioned Patrick Mahomes taking what's given to him. And that's the difference between Patrick Mahomes and CJ Stroud, one of the many differences between those guys at this point in their career. Patrick Mahomes takes what the defense gives him. There's check downs. There's adjustments. There's a willingness to do whatever it takes to win. He started to use his legs. And I think there's actually a few things that CJ Stroud can learn from Mahomes. I think CJ Stroud using his legs, we saw it last game. That was the third most rushing yards that he had in a game. Big part of why they won. Patrick Mahomes has started doing that as his weapons were out, injured, uncertain, all that. He started doing that. I think CJ needs to do that. Be willing to check down. Be willing to take the 2 or 3 yard game. We saw CJ do that a little bit better the other day. Cade Stover had 4 catches. Probably want to get Joe Mixon involved more in the pass game, but the using the legs and the taking what the defense gives you, I think is something that CJ Stroud is going to have to do if the Texans want to compete. And I don't know what the deal is, but for whatever reason, there's been a really strange absence in this offense with Bobby Slowik. And
damn it, Bobby.
It involves Joe Mixon. So you've lost all these wide receivers, and we hear about all these injuries. And then you look at Joe Mixon, and you look at his rushing yards. The rushing yards are fine. The rushing yards, they're about up to par. But then you look at the receiving yards, and in 2020, Joe Mixon missed a lot of time. So that one doesn't necessarily count. But this year, Joe Mixon has 52 targets, which is the 3rd fewest that he's had in a season in which he played the majority of the games. It is the 2nd fewest amount of receptions that he's had in a season in which he's played the majority of a game. We saw Joe Mixon in training camp. We saw Joe Mixon being involved in the pass game. We've seen them throw wheel routes to him. But for whatever reason, 2nd fewest receptions of his career in the 7 seasons that he's played the majority, and the 4th fewest targets. Whose fault is that? Is that Bobby Slowik's? Is it CJ Stroud's? Could it be a combination of the two? I don't know. It just needs to change, and Joe Mixon needs to be a part of this pass offense. He has to. The other thing, we talked about the Chiefs not being fully healthy on offense until really this game. The Texans aren't either, but I don't think you let Bobby Slowik off the hook when it comes to that area of struggle, etc., because the Texans offense has been frustrating whether they had Stephon Diggs in the hell. When they were winning with Stephon Diggs, they were talking about Stephon Diggs and guys in the locker room. The offense is still leaving meat on the bone. Then when Diggs left and it was Nico Collins and Tank Dell, didn't see much. Then when Nico was out, didn't see much. So that the one thing that's been consistent about the offense is they've left meat on the bone. So they got to find other ways to take advantage of that. And I think CJ Stroud's legs and Joe Mixon in the pass game are 2 things that they need to do. Now, as far as DeMeco Ryans having to go against Andy Reid, and both of these teams, by the way, they're bottom 12 in the red zone. So red zone offense has not been great for either one of these teams. But Hollywood Brown was a guy who they signed in the offseason, and I think there's a Hollywood factor to keep an eye on. Right now, his over-under on receiving yards is 39. If you are someone who likes to wager, I would take the over in that because the Texans have a good front 7. I think Andy Reid is going to try to get the ball to guys in space a little bit quicker. I think he's going to take some shots. I think he's finally got a healthy Hollywood Brown. We really haven't seen him. I think Hollywood Brown over 39 receiving yards. That's a wager that I would personally make as well. By the way, Cade Stover over 1.5 receptions too. I think you can get plus money for that if you want to look at that and think about CJ taking what they give him. But the Hollywood Brown factor, I think, is something to really keep an eye on, as well as Xavier Worthy. Now, there is one way that the Texans can combat this. And the strength of the Texans team, the strength of the Chiefs is they just know how to win. We can't really fully assess their offense because we haven't seen this offense together. There's a chance they flip the switch and we don't even recognize what this is. And all of a sudden, there's a completely new element. But the Texans corners, Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley, they have a massive opportunity to be physical with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, 2 smaller receivers who, let's be honest, I know the Texans probably don't love cold weather. These guys don't either. Let's be honest. Xavier's from California. He played his ball in Texas. Hollywood, he's from Florida. He does not like the cold weather either. And these guys are little. So if you can get physical with these guys, I do think there's that element. But there's not one guy that you can just look at and take away. And that's kind of what DeMeco touched on when I asked him the question about Kansas City and where exactly they're at. But I think the one thing to really keep an eye on, I don't think the Texans have as much weaponry. I know the Texans don't have as much weaponry on offense. We know that Andy Reid versus Bobby Slowik is a mismatch of all mismatches. but CJ Stroud's going to have to use his legs like Patrick Mahomes did when his squad was banged up. It can't be a one-off with what CJ Stroud did the other day. That opportunity is going to be there. He played okay against the Chiefs last time around. You're going to have to deal with other factors as well, experience, etc. Right now, the line is 8, but CJ Stroud's legs need to be a factor. The corners need to get physical, and DeMeco Ryans going to have his hands full because unlike the Texans, we haven't seen this group of the Kansas City Chiefs skill position guys, and there's a lot of reasons to be scary about them. Now, the good news is the Texans' strength is defense, so it's good on good, but there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of challenges for DeMeco Ryans, and it's not like the Texans where the offense is grab ass no matter who's in there. They got one of the best offensive minds of all time. They got one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and they got some intriguing skill guys. Going to be real interesting. I'll be at practice today, actually about to head there right now. Little later practice, SNL with myself and Cody Stutes, which you can subscribe to on all podcast platforms. That's going to air at 6:15, 4 p.m. throughout the week. Playoffs kind of making that schedule a little bit different, but it's still daily, still the #1 Texans podcast, still the best collaboration in the game. It's not going anywhere in the off season. So appreciate y'all for coming through. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like. Be sure to write along. Be sure to tell me if you disagree with anything that I said about this matchup. I think there is a Hollywood factor. I think the Kansas City Chiefs skill guy is going to be a little bit better than we anticipate, and it's going to be an interesting matchup. CJ, use them legs, throw to Mixon, and take what they give you. Take the lessons from Mahomes. Appreciate y'all for coming through. We're all in this together.
In the locker room, Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got